It's not sponsored by Ghost.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, because the other one, the lighting.
All right, well, hello and welcome, everybody. Julio, thanks for joining me again. This is our second edition of this podcast that we're doing. Last time that we went and met, we talked about, things that I wish I would have known. And kind of how the trajectory kind of went from that one is, we kind of came up with three things in between us that we kind of thought we should deep dive in to kind of be able to show, our generation and maybe even the next generation coming up, like some of the things to do in order to essentially set them up for success going forward.
Correct.
It needs to be known that, hey, these are our opinions at the end of the day. You should research and fact check everything. Because at the end of the day, like everybody's perspective is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But, ultimately, I kind of figured we just talk about three things today. The first one is how should somebody use their VA loan? And then what type of mindset do you think that you had going forward that's actually led you into success post-transition, post-Marine Corps? And then I wanted to talk about just like the leadership aspects that the Marine Corps especially instills in you and how you have been able to use those leadership aspects in the current environment since you've gotten out and kind of some of the mindset involved with that. Because I think ultimately everything is about mindset, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's about mindset.
And, the more successful type of mindset you have, the more successful you'll ultimately become, which obviously I believe in having an altruistic, optimistic type of mindset. But obviously, what is the saying in the Marine Corps? Pray for the best, but prepare for the worst, right? But, without further ado, man, let's kind of deep dive into, the VA loan. Why it's such a benefit, and then some of like the misconceptions and misnomers that are about it. Because I talk to veterans all the time. That's one of the great things about my job is I can still talk to my tribe, which is the Marine Corps, and I can still, I can talk to young devil dogs and be like, hey man, like, dude, I was where you were at as a sergeant thinking about doing the exact same thing you were doing. Yep. And this is why I made the decisions that I made. And then I also very much talked to them like, hey man, I went through 7 different duty stations I was in. And if I would have been a smarter Mark at the time, I would have had 7 different investment properties. You know what I mean? I would have bought an investment property at every single duty station I went to, and I think I would have had 7 of them right now. You know what I mean? That's a lot of passive income, and that's a great way to set yourself up for success. And then just throughout my time period, especially post 2008 financial collapse and everything else, man, interest rates were good. It was a great time to buy a property. Interest rates have gone up a little bit now, but at the end of the day, I still fundamentally believe that it's always going to be better to own than to rent. And, just my patriotism or whatever else you want to call it, I fundamentally believe the more people that own property in this country, which is the pursuit of happiness, the better our country is going to become at the end of the day. Because you own something, just like the leadership thing that we'll talk about last. You own it, you have to take responsibility for it, right? It's nobody else's responsibility but your own. So you better take care of it. So, but, what are some of the things that you have seen? And because, you have 2 VA loans right now.
Yeah, 2 VA and one conventional investment loan.
Yeah. And, generally speaking, I know that you work with a broad group of clientele, but, essentially your bread and butter is, you like working VA, you like working with your fellow Marines, I assume. So what have you seen with them as far as some of like the misconceptions or maybe just a lack of understanding of the entire process?
It's just a lack of information. I think, going back to when I was in the Marine Corps, they didn't really talk about like go in debt with your benefits. They just pretty much laid it out there. Oh, it's there, but it never really gone in debt, broke it down. Unless you talk to other Marines that did that same process, then they're your, the main point of contact that you need to talk to. So I think now I talk to a lot of Marines that are NCOs, and I'm trying to teach them what I know. That way they can teach your junior Marines like, hey, this is what you need to do coming into the fleet. Pretty much, this is what you need to do with TSP. This is why you need to invest in these categories because it grows. This is what you need to do with the VA loan. If you're going to get married, you're going to live off base. Buy the property. It doesn't have to be your forever home. A lot of Marines, they're looking for the right property, and it's like, look, I get it. You want to have this, and that, but if this ain't gonna be your forever home, just buy it, live in it for a year, and then rent it out.
Yeah, Yeah,
You know?
and that's the thing too, right? And I wonder why it is that way that we think about, oh, this has to be our forever home or whatever else. Because at the end of the day, if it's the first home that you've ever bought,
Uh-huh.
it's a step up home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's step up home. And what I always tell people that I just had a lot of success with coming up is like, do townhouses. You buy a townhouse, that is a perfect future investment property.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think that like somehow they're doing something wrong about buying a place knowing that they're going to rent it out in the future, and that's totally fine. Like
Yeah.
trust me, the everybody understands that it's a step up home, and if you meet the primary residence clause of the contract, then you're good to go. And the primary residence clause of VA loan states that you
Mm-hmm.
will occupy it as your primary residence within 60 days of closing, to the point where your family can occupy it as their primary residence, as if their immediate family, of course.
Correct.
And that satisfies that clause as well. And then if you live in it for a year, now, obviously, the VA would like you to have a reason of moving out of it other than just, oh, I just bought that as an investment property. But, if you're moving up, you're moving into up to a bigger home, right? That
Yeah.
makes sense, right? If as long as it makes sense, for the most part, underwriting is going to be good with it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it doesn't make sense, right, you bought a townhouse and you want to buy the townhouse right next to yours after a year, that might throw up some red flags as far
Yeah.
as like, hey, what is your intention with this or whatever else. But for the
Even
most,
orders. Like,
orders all day.
you buy a house and then 2 months later, orders to, go to drill field recruiting school.
Right.
And then you
Pernies and
just
Marine
bought
Corps.
this house, and then you can honestly rent it out. That's a good example of situations that arise, and then now you have to rent it out even before the year mark.
Yep. No, 100%. I mean, because at the end of the day, when you do everything up until closing, it's a point in time.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And what happens after closing? If the Marine Corps says you're moving, guess what, buddy? You're moving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you ain't got no choices in matter. Like, it's not like, oh, sorry, I just bought a house, Marine Corps, I'm not moving. It's like, no.
Yeah.
And they understand that as far as like the loan process itself goes. Like, most things are prioritized, but at the end of the day, if you're active duty, your priority is to whatever branch of service that you're serving.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say you're moving, you're moving. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's what's going down.
And we're in a time where it's pretty much, like you said, also it's PCS season.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of Marines, or Navy personnel that are moving to Jacksonville, North Carolina, or the surrounding areas. And so what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get into those Facebook pages or get my name out there and let them know, hey, before you start even looking on living on base, let's see your options on buying a home.
Yep.
And it's all right if you already have that VA loan over there in Pendleton or in Hawaii or wherever you're at, but let's see the options. Let's see why it benefits you, whether it's taxes, write-offs, et cetera, whatever it is. And that's how I got, some clients. They see me on social media. They see what I've been posting. They see what I'm doing with a lot of my buddies that I was stationed with. And I'm trying to teach that same message and push it out there so they all know, like, hey, I was like, we can help you build wealth through your VA loan.
Oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with it, which is weird because a lot of, I don't know, I found that it's like almost like a militaryism type of mentality that somehow you think if you're getting ahead, you've done something wrong or something. It's something weird like that. It's like, no, bro, like you just honestly used your benefit as you were supposed to, and you're benefiting from it. So why wouldn't you use it? And as far as living on base goes, I just can speak for myself. I was a barracks rat, I think, for 5 or 6 years. You know what I mean? Because I was a single guy and lived in the barracks for a very long time. And I mean, I enjoyed my barracks life. Don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? You always had something to do and you always had, buddies to hang out with or whatever else. But, post living in the barracks, the call to live on base is beyond me.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it.
A lot of Marines, and I know a bunch of them that they want to get out of the barracks. They don't care where they go, but they just want to get out of the barracks. They're tired of the moldy barracks. They're tired of, all the nonsense that come with it. They just want to get a property, but they don't realize, like, oh, wow, like, they think it's the same living on base and living outside base. And I know some Marines that lived on base. I know some Marines that bought a house. And at the same time that we were getting out of the Marine Corps, the person that bought a house, had thousands of dollars of equity that, once they sold, they were able to go back or go wherever that, they want to go. And financially well, compared to some Marines that lived on base. They threw the money down the toilet. They never got that money back, and now they got to figure out a way to, start.
And I mean, if you're married, you get BH on right. So why? I mean, my thing about it is the military is going to be giving you money for you to invest in a property that you can then gain equity into, and that property can appreciate. Or you can choose to live on base, have to go through a gate every time you go
yeah.
in and out. You never really get away from it at that point, right? Like you better shave on a Saturday, homie. And then, and then on top of that, you don't own your house. You can't have, you got a damn Doberman. You can't have it at your house, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't have that. You can't have lizards. You can't have all sorts of things. I talk to people all the time. They're like, I just really miss my lizards. I'm like, okay, well, let's get you a house so you can have your lizards.
And
You know
even
what I
trying
mean?
to bring like family, trying to get them
Right.
on base, it's just,
It's a pain.
it's a headache.
It's a pain. Yeah. And I just wonder too, like, what's the mentality of base wanting to? I don't even know if they really want to keep people on base anymore. Because at the end of the day, they could use those for training places.
Yeah.
You know what
I mean,
mean?
they make some profit off of it. They make
Yeah.
a good amount of money off of it, which is, and I think it just goes back to lack of information. Like,
Yeah.
that's the whole goal why, you and I are trying to get in onto base and try to give these courses out, teach Marines at an early stage that, hey, there's opportunity for you to build wealth while you're still in. You don't have to rely on just your paycheck.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Not only that, I mean, the military's paying you, and you could just use this money to have an investment property, like a future investment property, your own house. But then, wait, if you're, the typical amount of time that you spend at one duty station at a minimum is 2 years.
Yeah.
So that's 2 years of appreciation in the market. If you think the market's going to appreciate, and I would say over the last 20 years, it would show that housing appreciated pretty rapidly.
Oh yeah.
And they
And
give you the money, and why don't you want to use it? Like you just,
I used
to
to
me, it's
think-
the easy button.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
No, you're good.
I used to think that if you used it one time, you had to sell that house, and then now you're able to use it again, and that's not the case.
Nope, not the case at all. And to the point where essentially the first time you use your VA loan, it starts like eating away at like this county conforming loan limit. And the county conforming loan limit in most counties, for the most part, it's $726,000. All right, so if you have multiple properties, then it just kind of eats away at this 726K until you use up that entire 726K. And if you use up that 726K conforming loan limit, that means that you just have to now supplement your down payment, right? So you have to just make up for what the VA guarantee would have been. You just have to make that up for via down payment.
Now, 726K, for an example, that's just it's not like strict. Like it goes off of your debt to income, I'm assuming.
So,
And it can go up and go down. Oh, and what I do know, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's for a single family. But then once you get into the duplex, threeplex, fourplex, then that 726K starts going up from what I saw on the county.
yeah, I mean, it definitely it can change, but the main thing about the $726,000 is it's the conforming loan limit for your area, and that can change via your area. Like Hawaii, for instance, it's higher. New York City, it's higher.
Yeah.
Because it's actually based off of whatever like the medium amount is. So as far as can you use a VA loan for 726K? Depends on your debt to income ratio, right? So that's like that another layer that's in there. So you have just your overall conforming loan limit. But the good thing about VA too is you can go up to 1.5 million, you can go up to $2 million. It doesn't
If
matter.
you make
If your debt to income ratio supports that.
okay.
And the beautiful thing about VA loans as well is they are very like forgiving when it comes to your debt to income ratio. For instance, like a conventional loan product, 50%. That's it. That's as high as you can go. 50%. If you're at 51, you don't qualify for a conventional loan product. You got to come up with down payment at that point. Whereas VA, it goes off of the automatic underwriting system, just like everything else does. But with your debt to income ratio, very much is going to be based off of like your credit score, how much reserves you have, and everything else. And if you still get automatic underwriting approval, like you can go well above 50%.
Yeah.
I don't generally take young guys above 50% on the back end as far as their debt to income ratio, because you have like the front end and the back end. The back end is the future house and all of your debt against your income, which makes the ratio. And then the front end is just the house and your income, which makes that ratio. So you got a front end and a back end debt to income ratio. And as far as like the back end goes, generally if you're a younger cat, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to take you much above 50% just because I don't want you to be house poor. And your eyes might be bigger than your wallet to an extent, right? But, if you're a seasoned person and then, I'll take as high as you want it to go. But I'm always open and honest with them about what their debt to income ratio is. And, very transparent about, hey, this is the payment, this is everything that goes into the payment, and everything else, because mortgage payments are important. But
And I think another thing is that they don't understand is the payment. So there's your principal and interest. So a lot of times, what I like to do is I'll break it down the closing documents. I mean, you do the same thing with the clients that we have. Principal and interest. That's going to be your payment, and then your interest, and then there's escrow account. An escrow account is pretty much the bank holding your hand, babysitting you, collecting the taxes and insurance for you every single month. So by the end of the year, whenever they're due, they pay them in your behalf. Why? Because a lot of people are not responsible.
it protects the loan. It makes the loan a lot safer at the end of the day. When you think about, and this might be like a Marine ism from me, but it's always about safety, right? At the end of the day, like, if you're dead, you can't fight, right? And the bank looks at it, or the lender, or whoever's providing the money looks at it as, who can put a lien on this property other than myself, right? Because obviously, when you have a loan for a property, there's a lien on it. The lien is through your lender, right? But a lender doesn't want anybody else to have a lien on a property that they have a lien upon, right? Because now if there's two liens on it, my lien is not as important, right? It's still probably the first lien holder. I have the highest priority as far as liens go. Correct. But if the county puts a tax lien on it because I haven't paid my taxes,
it's a higher priority.
Well, not necessarily a high priority, but now there's two conflicting liens on one property, and that makes it so it's not as safe. You know what I mean? So that's why, there's certain loan products that you can waive escrows and you can just pay them yourself. But for the most part, like, the lender is always going to incentivize you to escrow those payments. And a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand too is, like, what can a lender actually affect? And a lender can honestly affect only two parts of your mortgage payment, and that's the principal and interest payment, right? Everything else is going to be based off of your homeowner's insurance, which you choose yourself, and then nobody gets away from taxes. So taxes are taxes, right? So whatever that property is, tax assessed value. Veterans, if you're 100% permanent total in North Carolina, you get your first $45,000 of your tax assessed amount waived. But other than that, that's everybody else is home.
And every state's different. I know
you're paying taxes on it. Yeah.
I think they were trying to fight that to get it all. Exactly. Here in North Carolina, I don't know where they're at on that. Honestly,
it might get there sooner or later. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, the future is unknown, so you only can kind of operate with what you know, right? But as far as the VA loan itself goes, it's a benefit, and it's a benefit that you have to earn. So it's not like a typical loan product that you just have to be, breathing and have a credit score to apply for it. Like, there's a lot of stipulations that go into you getting your certificate of eligibility from the VA that says that you rate a VA loan as a benefit. So
now, if you compare, let's say you compare apples to apples, you compare not apples to apples, but you compare a veteran or a military, and you compare a civilian. He has one obviously has a VA loan. Every single time they want to buy a property, after they meet the guidelines, they don't have to put a down payment down. Now, if you didn't have the VA loan and you wanted to buy a second primary residence, you're gonna have to
at least 10% down.
Yeah, 10% down.
Yeah, 10% down for a second residence. Yeah. I mean, even if it's a primary and you're looking at, like, if it's going to be like you've already owned a home before, I mean, you're at least going to have to come up with either 3.5% if you're going FHA or 5% for conventional.
Yeah.
There's obviously some other loan products that some other people offer. I would just say be wary of them, especially if they sound too good to be true. A lot of times they are. But I mean, it's just kind of the kind of way it goes. And and then I would have to just kind of spin it back on you as far as, I don't know how many listings you've had to date, but I know a lot of people run away from VA loans because they think that it's somehow some sort of hard approval process or whatever else. And it's my understanding from my side of the fence that, to me, it's an easier approval process for most other loan products, in my opinion. Maybe because I just know about that product more than anything else, or the fact that it's a benefit, and the fact that the VA very much stipulates that they need to make this benefit available to veterans as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I work a lot more with buyers, and so right now we're in the Wilmington area, but I cover pretty much all the way up to, I mean, I can go past Morehead City, Cherry Point. I cover Jacksonville all the way down to pretty much Calabash to border of before getting to South Carolina. And the market in Jacksonville is different than the market here in Wilmington. In the market in Jacksonville, a lot of my clients, Pretty much everything over there is they're gonna accept VA loans with no issues. Here in Wilmington, there's a lot of properties that they won't accept VA loans, and a lot of times it's just because the property needs a lot of work. So in which I understand that the property needs a lot of work and it's not going to pass VA guidelines, and I understand that.
Yeah, the VA is always going to make sure that the veteran is taken care of.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if your house isn't safe or it's not sound, then you're not going to get a VA loan on it.
And what I'm running into right now, in the Jacksonville market area or that area, Onslow County, is they're doing a lot of tidewaters. A lot of tidewaters, for a lot of people that don't know that, is if the appraiser can't justify what the price is, then the appraised value is, then they're going to ask for the listing agent and the buyer agent to come up with comps to justify why that is the contract. And so, a lot of times, if it doesn't appraise, then that's something that we negotiate with the other party. And in the market that we're in right now, there's a lot more room to negotiate. A year, 2 years ago, you're coming out of pocket for that money.
Well, supply and demand, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that the supply and demand ratio is getting back a little bit more even, just because of interest rates, economy, or whatever other stipulations. I still think in North Carolina we're growing, so I think it is still a seller's market to an extent, but being on the buyer side of the transaction is really not a bad thing either, because at the end of the day, at least you're able to provide them with a home, right? And it's just you might have to put in a couple offers on a couple of different homes, right?
And Jacksonville market, that whole area over there, it is a multiple offer situation because it's really affordable over there. If you compare to Hampstead, which is in between Wilmington and Jacksonville, Hampstead is, the median house there is about $500,000. The median household price in Jacksonville is low 300s, maybe high 200s, and then you have military members coming in and out, so a lot of those houses are coming and going quick. Compared to here in Wilmington, where it's like about $500,000-$600,000 medium household. And I think what's going to happen is where I see the future going in this whole area is it's going to be a big metropolitan city. So if you think about Jacksonville all the way down to Southport, the amount of people that are moving here from up north, and plus military, but the amount of people that are moving here is insane. The amount of growth, the amount of development. I talk to a lot of investors. I talk to a lot of business owners, and I try to be really involved with what's going on. And so I tell a lot of people, I was like, that are saying, "Oh, I'm just gonna wait for the market to crash." It's just like,
it's the beach, man. It's the beach, and it's a military town on top of that. So and we have low tax brackets here. Our property taxes. They're pretty low, right? Compared to where a lot of people are moving from, like we're in a low tax area. Everything's relative, right? But I think that it's definitely growing. Like it just reminds me of where I kind of grew up, like the Panhandle, a little bit. I just remember how that place was 30 years ago, and how it is now. And like this is more like that was 20 years ago. And it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing. Because at the end of the day, there's only so much beachfront, and people like the beach, right? People like going to the beach. It relaxes you. Being by the water relaxes you. That's why most of the freaking human population lives by the water. And
it's pretty affordable. I think
right now it is.
Yeah. A lot of people caught on to that though.
Yeah,
a lot of people caught on like, oh damn, I can buy a house for $250,000-$300,000 10 minutes away from the beach.
Well, good things don't stay quiet for long, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they just don't. It's not in our nature. But just to kind of recap, just as far as the VA loan goes, we didn't really hit on the funding fee. What questions arrive when you get asked about the funding fee or whatever else going forward? I try to be very open and honest about what the funding fee is and why it is.
I just pretty much keep it simple. I just like, hey, when you're active duty or you don't have a disability, in order to use a VA loan, they're going to charge you something called a funding fee, which is a certain percentage. I don't know off the top of my head. You probably know. Mm-hmm. And they just lowered it too for every time you use the VA loan. Now, if you have a disability, doesn't matter the percentage.
It's waived.
It's pretty much waived.
Mm-hmm. Or if you're on active duty and you have a Purple Heart, it's waived too. Which is not necessarily, it's not as prevalent as it was back when we were in the GWAT. Mm-hmm. Most of those people are out now, but the guys that went over to Syria or something else like that. There's still some people around with Purple Hearts. Yeah. But no, what I always tell people as far as like the active duty guys that talk about the funding fee is, not everybody pays their mortgages. unfortunately. So what the funding fee does is it allows them to continue on with this type of benefit for future generations, because it has to be as net zero as possible. Yeah. So it can't be costing the government a ton of money to be able to do this, and so on and so forth. So that's the purpose of the funding fee. And it gets you out of mortgage insurance, which is well worth it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one of the only loan products that you can have 100% financing and have no mortgage insurance on it.
And get up to 6% seller concessions.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know what that means. So I just want to touch on that real fast.
Yeah. As far as the seller concessions go, pretty much it means that it can cover all of like the loan cost, and it can cover the actual funding fee as well. But seller concessions are essentially something that, part of the contract, it says that a buyer essentially incentivizes the borrower or buyer in order to buy their house by covering some of their costs. And how it just works is it all just kind of gets divvied out on the closing disclosure at the end of the day. So essentially what happens is the seller of the property doesn't walk away with as much profit as they could have, and they end up sharing some of that profit with the buyer, and it helps with just closing costs in general.
And that's what I'm running into right now. Literally every single military member that I'm working with right now in the Jacksonville area, one, they have the VA loan, so I tell them, hey, you don't have to put any money down. And two, we're in the market where they're giving seller concessions, they're covering your closing costs. So, for example, a deal that we have, their closing cost is about $7,000. We got $8,500 for the closing costs. That's going to cover their closing costs, and on top of that, they can use the rest of the funds
to buy down the rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep, they can buy down the rate. The only thing that seller concessions cannot go towards is actual down payment itself. Can't go towards down payment, and it can't go towards like future type of improvements. But other than that, I mean, if there's something that needs to get fixed, as long as it's fixed before closing, it's good to go. And then it can cover all of your closing costs to include the funding fee, and then to include, generally speaking, up to 2 points.
I mean, that's cheaper than right now trying to apply for an apartment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and shoot, I'm applying for an apartment. A lot of people don't understand that you're at least going to have like 2 months up front in order to apply for an apartment. A lot of people are scared of, buying a house because it's a larger commitment, right? But at the same time, like, you're making your mortgage payments on time. It helps out with your credit and helps out with most things. And if you don't own it, you're never going to be able to make any money off of it.
Credit. And I don't know if we want to talk about that or another time, but I run across a lot of, and not just saying it has to do with military members, but a lot of buyers that their credit isn't good at all. And then they want to, we'll wait, 4 or 5 months when we're ready to buy. 4 or 5 months come, we run the credit and do all this stuff, and then come to find out that they're going to need an extra 6 months to fix their credit, when we could have fixed this way back when I first, told them. Yeah. So I tell people, I was like, let's just start the process now. Let's see where you're at and what we need to fix. So when the time comes, when you see something that pops up, we're not scrambling trying to get everything situated for you to have approval.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not a credit specialist by any means, and I'm not in the business of doing credit repair, but I can take a look at things and let you know when you have issues, right? And if you don't get your credit looked at, then you don't know what to fix.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And if you're like, I'm just waiting for this, there becomes a point where, like, if you're not actively, like, there is no time better than the now to fix something that's wrong. You know what I mean? And if you don't know about it till 6 months, then same thing happens to me all the time. I'll put in an application. Next thing I know, you're like, we're going to go look at this house. And I ask, well, do you have your application in? And then it's always a no, right? But then they always want to put, like, the cart before the horse for some reason. And I think that's like a human thing, right? Like, everybody wants dessert before dinner. And it's just like, it's a humanism. They look at the big shiny house like, I want that. But it's like, well, dude, like, you don't even know if you're qualified for that house yet. Yeah. So I always make the suggestion to get pre-qualified first. And, a lot of people are like, I might not buy it for like 2 months or whatever else. The qualification process, I mean, it's really all about your credit score, and your credit score is good for 120 days. So if your credit score is good for 120 days as far as the credit report that we pull, then, I mean, you got 4 months, and you can't sit there and tell me, because it happens all the time. Yeah. The second you, like, fill out an application, next thing I know is, like, you're looking at a house, right? It's a very quick succession thing. Yeah. So always just take the time and just put in the application, know what your payment's going to be, so you can be an informed buyer, and then at least you're not looking at houses that you can't afford, right? Or that you are going to overextend yourself to the point where you should not afford it, maybe.
If they submit everything in the morning, By the afternoon, you should already have a pre-approval.
Yeah, depending on how they make their income, though.
Okay.
That is important, right? So if their income is not like if they're not like active duty, for instance, if they're not salary, if they have like a bunch of isms when it comes to their income, because some people make money in all sorts of different ways in this country.
That's the goal, though, to make money in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, if you, for instance, like you're self-employed and you haven't done your taxes yet, like that's gonna slow down the train a little bit. You know what I mean? If for instance, you're like, cool, I was W-2. I just switched over. Now I'm 1099. Let's go. I'm like, cool, man. We can go in like 2 years. You know what I mean? There's just certain things that a lot of people do when it comes to their income that is detrimental to the overall mortgage process. And that's just one of those things. Once again, you put in the paperwork up front, you'll at least know that. And I mean, if you got a 2-year waiting period because, just like me and you, we're on commission, you got to receive it for 2 years for me to count it, right? And at the end of the day, like, I can't change that 2-year scenario, but at the end of the day, if you didn't know that starting off and you're like hell bent on this house, then I'd be like, okay, cool, man. Maybe don't go with the full commission job for a while. You know what I mean? You never know. Obviously, you make whatever choices you make at that point, but there's just certain ways of making money that make the overall loan process a lot more difficult.
And while they're once you get the approval and then they go into contract, I always tell them, do not buy another car. Do not max out your credit cards. Do not do anything of any sort of thing.
Don't touch your credit. Yeah. Don't touch it. Don't. Yeah, 100%. We tell them, right? But then, they show up with a brand new car or something else like that because, some people just don't listen.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can still make it work, right? And they're like, okay, cool. Like your debt to income ratio went from just like 50 to 55. Still is like, as long as you got good credit for the most part, you still probably can get it. But I've had people that straight up just did a bunch of stuff and I was just like, cool, man, like you no longer qualify because you just bought a brand new Chevy. You know what I mean?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? It's only $700 payment. I was like, that just destroys your debt to income ratio though, So I always try to tell people, like, whenever you fill out the mortgage application, you need to prioritize what's most important to you. And to me, it's like, a home for your family is going to trump everything else, for the most part.
Yeah.
And, put everything else on the back burner till you reach your objective of, buying your home. Now, what happens after you bought the home is totally on you. Because like I said, your pre-qualification, your approval process, underwriting, everything else, it's a snapshot in time. And that snapshot in time ends at closing. So what happens post-closing? Obviously, we don't expect you to like quit your job or anything and, change your life, you know what I mean? But at the same time, like the future is unknown. So we can only do our best due diligence that leads up into a point, and that point is closing. And then post-closing, obviously, you need to make sure you're paying your bills. But, post-closing, if that just bucket list thing was just really on there and you just really had to do it, then do it post-closing where it's not going to affect your debt to income ratio. But I think we talked about quite a number of things. So you can definitely use your VA loan more than once. It's called bonus entitlement is what it's called when you use it more than once. The second thing is if you buy a place and you happen to get orders afterwards, no harm, no foul. You're at the needs of the military and whatever branch of service that you serve. Correct. You get orders after that. It is what it is as far as the house goes. Like you can then sell it or rent it out if you needed to. And then lastly, just as far as some of the do's and don'ts, right? Once you started the mortgage process, just understand that it is a snapshot in time. And if you're approved via that snapshot in time, let good stay good.
Yeah.
Don't sit there and argue and like alter things and go buy yourself a brand new truck or something else like that because it will completely mess up the overall process and
screw up everything.
And ultimately it's about priorities, man. So depending on where your priority is, which I assume buying a house for yourself or your family is probably a little bit higher priority than
I don't know, man. Some military members, they want to get that Mustang before they even get.
I know, man. I know. Which just to me is like you ain't got a garage for it, homie. Yeah. You know what I mean? Get the garage first, then get the car. But yeah, man. Just kind of switching gears a little bit. I think you're a successful person. You own a couple properties, man. You work hard. You've just now somewhat started in the real estate world, but you're off to the ground and running. And I'm sure that your people can be.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know that wasn't. And I want to kind of put that message out there. A lot of people they're hitting me up and they're like, hey, I want to get into the real estate business, because they see all these gurus, they see people making this ton of money, and I told myself from the start, pretty much, like I told myself I wasn't gonna make any money. So I told myself, hey, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna grind. If I don't make any money, okay, that's good. I didn't pass the class exam the first try, so I had to retake the whole class again the second try, and then I passed it, and then I went to take the state exam, passed it, got my license August, started selling September, October. By December, January, which was only 3-4 months after, I already had almost 10 properties,
Which
pretty
is
much
awesome.
either sold or under contract
Yeah.
already at that point, which I did not know that wasn't normal.
What is normal? Yeah.
I think normal.
That was my thing all the time, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was the same way. I was just like, what is a measure of success for me? Because it's hard, right?
Uh-huh.
And what's a measure of success for you? My measure of success is, I don't know, a little bit more.
Yeah,
I could always try a little bit harder, right?
yeah, and you just got to do anything and everything. I mean, normal is 1 or 2 properties a year that you sell. But people ask me like, well, what are you doing? Like, how can I do the same thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I still work at the restaurant on the weekends. I hand out business cards to every single ticket that I get. I do social media. I do, I cold call here and there. I haven't done an open house since I've been in the business because I'm at the restaurant. Handwritten cards, mailers. You just got to do anything and everything, and you don't want to miss any single things and be like, oh, what if I would have tried that? No, try it. You just let everybody know because your cousin, sister's brother, husband, anybody knows someone that wants to buy or sell property.
Yep.
And so you want to make sure that they know that you are in real estate.
Right. Yeah. Sphere of influence. Sphere of influence is a great style of marketing, man, and it definitely works as far as the real estate industry goes because the real estate industry is intimate in general. Like it's your house, it's your home, it's your kingdom, and everything else. So, I definitely think that that's like a good mindset to have as far as like how are you successful going in. And I say that your mindset while you were in the military or whatever else, the more parallels that you can have to what you're currently doing, to what you used to do in your past, and the faster you can make those parallels, so it's like neural connections or whatever else you want to call it, the faster and more advantageous you can see opportunities and be able to overcome those opportunities and push out and like put yourself at risk, right? At the end of the day, you have to put yourself at risk a little bit. Being in real estate is not like a easy job.
No.
Being a loan officer is not an easy job, but at the end of the day, right, where there is risk, there is reward. So yeah, it's definitely like a mindset thing to me.
Yeah.
Like you just got to hustle and make it happen.
I mean, yeah, just as long as you got the hustle mentality, and like I've always had the hustle mentality growing up, in California, and I think the military kind of like gave me the discipline, gave me the hustle, and just combined it. It's like a straight shot of like, this is where you want to go. This is how you're gonna do it. You're gonna figure it out. Just like the military, they just figured that out. Like you just whatever it is, and for some reason, when you think there's no hope or there's no way to figure it out, in the military, you always find a way, no matter what.
Yeah,
I've noticed that.
Yeah, you have to, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like you want to be alive or not. I'd rather be alive than dead, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's just as far as mindset goes, I think those are just great points. And just to kind of finalize this on our last topic, because I think we're running out a little bit of time here. Leadership, and what does it mean to be a leader, and what does it mean to be a leader post transition to you?
I think you got to get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between being a manager, being a boss, and being a leader. And I think as a leader, you got to set the examples. You got to be there in the fight and leading the way and trying to, open the doors for the opportunities for the people under you. And I think when the manager is just giving orders, doing this and that. But when the leader, it's like you're breaking the boundaries. You're making stuff happen. You're letting them know, inspiring them that anything is possible, no matter what you do, how you do it, where you came from. At the end of the day, no one really cares where you came from. They care about where you're going.
Yeah.
And I think
it's all about what you've done for me lately to an extent.
And just teach them, everything you know. And making them successful is in my opinion, is you being a good leader. The people under you, people that look up to you.
Yeah. I think that everything you just talked about is servant leadership and humility. And that's kind of what I think too, right? At the end of the day, like and this is current world, I'm not going to win every battle. I'm not going to win every deal that comes along my way or whatever else. But there is a level of, it's not that I care what people think of me, but at the end of the day, I care if I did a good job.
Yeah.
And if I did a good job, then you're going to think highly of me at the end of the day anyways. So, and I think as far as like leadership goes, that's kind of how it goes, just even from like the Marine Corps day one. Like you're in charge of somebody, even if it's yourself. And, you know, you transfer that post transition into like our current environment and the real estate industry and everything else. It's like, I find that we just typically just take care of our people to the utmost, right?
Yeah.
To the utmost. Like obviously, like I've dealt with some clients that I just am like, you know, I would never let them know that. But at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, dude, you just did a lot of really dumb things. But you know, we're gonna try to fix it and get you where you need to go. But at the end of the day, like, come on, buddy. Like I tried to lead you out of this paper bag, and it just didn't work out. But you know, I think it's just far as just what do you bring to this environment, and like you've already said it, man. Humility, selflessness, and just the willingness to kind of go the extra mile.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if
no matter,
you do those things, it's not super complicated. You just got to understand you're going to work your ass off.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's pretty much, I mean, are there anything else that you kind of want to touch on that you want to lay out before?
No, man, I mean, we can just kind of, you know, go over just the synopsis of it. I mean, I think we talked about our VA loans, why it's such a great benefit, a mindset as far as like a mindset of being successful and not, it's honestly, it's a mindset of just not ever like accepting defeat and like it's just an obstacle to overcome.
And hang out with people that are also successful.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're 3 to 5, right? Yeah. Like, you know, keep your circle strong and tight. And then just, you know, as far as leadership goes and how we bring that type of mentality into the real estate world that we find ourselves in today, man. But yeah, dude, want to appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me. These are all opinions, you know, it's not nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in case you don't know, Mark Arrington with Raider Home Loans powered by Movement Mortgage. And by all means, if I can help you out and find your way to success through using your VA loan in the future, please just look me up.
I'm Julio Fuentes. I'm a realtor here in the area with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, Carolina Premier Properties, private marine as well, like Mark. And if you guys have any questions, looking for properties, you know, throughout the whole coast of North Carolina, Mark and I are your people.
Yeah, we'll take care of you. All right, till next time.
That was good.
Yeah, man. It goes by fast, doesn't it?